Welcome back, everybody, for another episode of Chasing Ghosts. This is the video series where I talk about those hard to find, those impossible to find comics, those things that are just high ratio, some variants, some tough books to go and track down. You're not just going to see them anytime you go to your shop and check their walls. And some of these books, again, aren't printed that much, and they're not easy to, like I said, track down. So sometimes you got to get lucky in finding many of these things. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, subscribe, hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see what books I got for you this week, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro, and I will be right back. Okay, so for this week, I decided to take a little bit of a theme in picking some of these books, as I do every so often. And this week's theme is I'm looking at some of the Marvel hidden gem variants. Granted, that is a broad subject, and these hidden gem variants could be anything from 1 in 50s, 1 in 25s, 1 in 100s, 1 in 200s, 1 in 500s, 1 in 1000s. There's a lot of different ratios that they decided to do these hidden gem variants over at Marvel, which basically is using either older or unused art or art from other projects and throwing them on a cover kind of for the first time in many cases. And I thought a lot of these were pretty interesting, and it is kind of tricky to nail down how many of some of these are actually out there. You'll see what I'm talking about as we get into some of these numbers, as we get to some of those really high ratios later on. I'm going to start this week off mostly with 1 in 100s because that's the bulk of the population of these hidden gems. Most of them are 1 in 100s. But again, like I said, they're scattered throughout the different ratios as well. So we're going to do a handful of 1 in 100s, and then I'm going to wrap it up with a couple of higher ratios. But again, it can be tricky to nail down exactly how many are actually out there. And so remember, these numbers and information I'm giving you are estimates. They're ballpark numbers. Nothing set in stone. We don't know for sure. There is no way to know 100% for sure. So with that, let's just get into it and let's start talking and let's start looking at some of these books. First one, Invisible Woman, #1. If you guys don't remember, Invisible Woman, she got her own series back in 2019, and with issue 1, they used this Jack Kirby art to give us a 1 in 100 incentive variant for that first book. I think it had a Hughes cover on the regular cover A. If not the regular cover A, there was a Hughes cover mixed in there for this Invisible Woman run, which, followed Sue Storm on her own kind of like little title here. Estimated print run for this #1 for the total regular series, the regular book, 64,000 plus. That's based off of Comicron's numbers. Those are orders, etc. Again, it's not 100%, but it's the best we got. And when you take that estimated order number and divide it by the 1 in 100 incentive, we can say maybe there's 640 or so of these out there. That doesn't mean that's exactly how many there are. There could be less. There could be even more, for all we know. It's tricky. But what I can tell you is that as far as people who have this book that submitted it, at least to CGC, there's only 10. Only 10 people graded this book. 8 9/8 and a pair of 9/6 for this edition. With that said, no one has also sold any in the last 3 months for this particular book, which I also find kind of interesting. That doesn't mean that there's none out there. It's just nobody's looking for this thing. So sometimes with some of these books, it's not a surprise to see no sales. But usually even the most random of books gets 1 or 2 sales over a 3-month stretch, because that's how far eBay's history goes without, stretching it further using Terapeak. But what's listed right now is more important of what we're looking at, because that's the measuring stick we're going to use to make our determination of whether this is just a hard to find book or a ghost. And for this particular variant, we are looking at all of 2 copies that I could find out there. Granted, this is a 1 in 100 incentive. I only found 2, none sold, only 10 graded. But even so, the price is only $70 to $80, which is actually under the ratio mark. Not something you see very often or all that often with books that are really, really tough to find. Because sometimes, even if a book is tough to find, it doesn't mean it's desirable. Remember that, especially when we're talking about a lot of these prices. Even if a book is really rare, that doesn't automatically mean it's valuable. There also has to be demand because that's how the market works. It's supply and demand. It's not one or the other. There could be a ton of demand, but if there's a ton of supply, who cares? The price is not going to go anywhere. And even if there aren't that many out there, if nobody wants it, price ain't going to go anywhere. So that could be the case of what we're looking at here. But still thought it was kind of fun to go and dig in and to look into this one because, like I said, I don't know a ton about these hidden gem variants apart from I see them all the time being released over the last handful of years and going, it's okay. It's okay. Like this cover. It's okay. It's not the greatest thing in the world. Some of them are weird. They use like t-shirt art and other weird like promotional things, and they try to make a cover out of it, and it doesn't always work because it seems unfinished, undone, or not up to par of what a cover should actually be. But this isn't terrible. Don't get me wrong. It's classic Kirby, but just not for me. Not at these prices. Even if this is under ratio, I don't like spending a lot of money on variants like this. So, we'll see. Next book, though, also in 2019, Doctor Doom got his own series. You can see they're kind of giving everybody their shot here. So, Doctor Doom #1. Pretty cool variants across this one as well. Some of them are pretty sought after and go for a pretty penny because people are searching for these Doom books because Doom is a popular villain. But surprisingly, this 1/100 Ditko, which again, October 2019, it's not all that crazy. Print run is a little less than the Sue Storm. It's on just under 60,000, so potentially just under 600 for this 1/100 variant. More in the CGC census. So we're looking at 59 copies, 50 of which are 9.8s, 6.96s, a pair of 9.2s, and a random 8.0. But still, it's a 1/100 Ditko Doom cover. Not something you see all that often. And it's not something we see sell all that often, as the last 3 months there have been no sales. However, if you wanted to go shopping for this one, you got some opportunities. Unfortunately, it's going to be pricier than that Invisible Woman. This isn't all the sales of all available. I think there's like one or two more, but this is the most I could squeeze onto the screen and still have you guys actually read it. So we're looking at some 9.8s, looking for 225 up to like 325, 335. Even a raw is looking for 250. That's more of what I would have expected for a lot of these covers, being that they're 1/100s. But once again, you can see Doom carries more weight, I guess, than the Invisible Woman. Even though most times logic dictates that the female covers will also do better. But I guess since it was a Kirby art classic, it wasn't very risque. It doesn't have that draw that might pull in those collectors and drive that price up. So maybe that's why Sue Storm is dragging behind here. The Invisible Woman #1. But whatever the case, if you wanted a Doom, you can find it. It's just a little pricey. That's all. Speaking of these other Fantastic Four characters getting this shot at this time, Fantastic Four Yancey Street, this thing special, also featuring a Kirby cover, had a #1 also in 2019. So there's a 1/100 here. Print runs much lower than the others at only about 20,000, maybe 21. So our incentive could potentially be just over 200. I say potentially because you'll see as we get through and deeper into these ones, like some of these variants, and especially these hidden gem variants, these books, they find their way out there. And they find their way out there in the weirdest corners. I think some people will get extra copies sold at a deep discount, like through those diamond pallet sales, which is things that were printed that were not actually delivered or sold. So they're just in a warehouse and then they just get bulked out. And sometimes they get bulked out to individuals who buy a bunch of them, or they get bulked out to things like those Five Below packs, those Walmart packs, etc. So that's how some of you times you guys will see people posting, look what I found. Look what I found in this Five Below pack, or look what I found in this Walmart pack. It's because some of these overprinted or books, they just didn't have enough people to qualify to give them all out. So they are leftovers. And no accounting to how many there could be because of that, which again could throw off these estimates as far as print runs go. Now that I've given that little bit of a speech, let's just look at the CGC census for this particular book, and we can see there are only 7 for the Kirby variant, and all of them are 9/8, but still only 7 for this book. So one might feel that the 200 number might be more accurate based off of the low submission numbers. But at the same time, not everybody subs these books because what's the point? Because some of the prices don't mean it's worthwhile. And here, look at what I'm talking about. This is a 1 in 100 incentive that could potentially be as low as 200 copies. Jack Kirby cover art. And yet, at auction, copies are only selling for $12 to $15. That's almost 1/10 of the ratio mark. Meanwhile, another seller sold 5 copies. How did they get 5 copies of a 1 in 100? You know it's not a shop that ordered 500 copies of Yancey Street. So, and also, if they did, they wouldn't be blowing these out for, $10.20 each on average. Well, I should actually say $10.21, I guess. But point being, $51 to get you 5 copies of a 1 in 100 variant seems kind of strange, doesn't it? But again, we're talking about supply and demand. I don't know if there's a lot of people who really care for this cover or really want this cover, regardless of how few there are, or they care about this title, this Yancey Street title. Just saying. But as I was bringing up those diamond pallet sales, those bulked out to other places, whether it be 5 and below, etc., somehow a seller got a hold of 5 copies for them to go and throw them up at auction, because it doesn't even seem like those are the only copies they have. When we look at what's listed, looks very similar. Doesn't that listing? Somebody having a lot of 5. Well, starting bid $2.99. We'll see where that one ends in another 4 days, but still surprising. And then there is one listed for $65, well, $66 buy it now, which is again still a good discount under that ratio mark. But that lot of 5 is really telling when we're talking about some of these books. So we can't trust these estimated numbers 100%. A lot of times they feel accurate, but still, we don't know for sure. So I'm presenting it to you. I'm telling you where those numbers come from, but don't take them as gospel. Don't take that as set in stone, because things like this make me question how many could actually be out there. With that said, let's move on to one more Fantastic Four book. This is actually Fantastic Four number 9. This is a Joe Quesada Galactus cover. It's pretty cool. Plain white background, which makes it feel unfinished, makes it feel a little undone, but also from 2019. It is a 1 in 100 incentive. It is deeper in the print, like not the print, into the run of the comic. You know, number 1's obviously going to be extra copies. It's a new number 1. Those other early issues also will probably be printed heavy, but by the time you get to number 9, you got a true sense of what the Fantastic Four readers are out there. And by and large, you'll see that number drop over time. But this one still held up pretty well at 51,000. So this incentive could potentially be 510. But we know to question things now, don't we? Especially with these. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the hidden gems. But whatever the case may be, there are a decent number of this one in the census. We've got 59 copies total, 49 9/8, 8 9/6, and then a few others kind of rounding that out. Copies of this book actually do sell, not for a ton. They're about half ratio here, as you can see, $35, $45, $48 at auction. And why are these at auction? Well, you know, I always tell you not to auction books like this that people don't care about. But if this person is just blowing these out because they don't, or these sellers are just blowing them out because they don't care, they got them for next to nothing, diamond pallet sale, whatever it might be, some sort of overstock sale through the distributor, maybe they don't care. Maybe they found them in a box at some storage unit sale. Maybe they bought them in a collection from somewhere else. Who knows where they got these books? But they must not really care what they get. They take what they get because it may not have cost them anything. But with that all said, those auctions sold. There are auctions available as well, including some buy it nows looking for a 60, 70, 80, a 9/8 looking at $200, which still isn't too bad for a 1 in 100 variant Galactus cover. Not too many Galactus variants. I mean, there's a good number, but not an overwhelming amount. But with that said, we'll leave Galactus there and move on to our next book, which is not related to Fantastic Four. We're going to pivot away from that and go to Savage Avengers #1. I liked this cover when it came out, but it was expensive right out of the gate, so I did not get one. This is a Mobius cover, also from 2019, 1 in 100. Pretty cool Elektra on Savage Avengers. As you know, that team featured some of the more savage characters. We had Punishers and Elektra, etc. On that squad. Moon Knight, I think, was a part of the group as well. But this book, solid print run over 111,000. So our incentive could potentially be over 1,000 copies. This seems pretty accurate because this, again, was a pretty heavily ordered book. New #1, new series, new group that had some people excited. But still, 64 copies in the census, 51 9/8s, 10 9/6s, and then a bunch of others. And we see this this book sell, and it sells all right. Best offer, $125. 9/8 only got $120 at auction. So you got to watch those auctions even still. But if you're looking for one, there's maybe over 1,000 copies. There are copies available. But again, they're not cheap. These are all buy it now. So those auctions, they'll end, and they may end at a discount because, again, there's not a book people are hunting, people are searching, that's on the tips of everybody's, on the top of their head when they're thinking about what book do I want to buy? What book am I searching for? This is just a random 1 in 100 hidden gem variant from, 5 years ago now. But still, buy it now prices, they're seeking 135, 165, up to $180. Fair. Fair enough. They're not moving, but that's what they're asking. Pivoting from that, oh, well, don't forget, Savage Avengers also did feature the Marvel Universe appearance of Conan on that squad. That's not what we're looking at here, but this is a Conan book. So we're going with Conan Battle for the Serpent Crown #1. So Conan miniseries, John Buscema cover, 1 in 100, February 2020. Print run, not too bad, about 32,000. So are there only 322 copies of this? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Could be more, could be less. Who knows for sure? I can tell you there are only 6 in the census, though, with 198, 3 9/6s, a 9/4, and a 9/0. So that's not a lot. This book, however, seems to sell all right. At auction, again, people are blowing these out at auction. $10 here, $30 there, $20 there. There was a best offer on a $62 ask as well. I don't know. Who knows how many are out there if they can afford to just take $10. And then we got listed copies, a 9/4 listed for about $100, and then a raw looking for $135 is all I can find currently on the market. So you can see copies have popped up over the last 3 months, thrown up at auction, and they ended because at auction they're going to end wherever they're going to end, and they didn't end for very much. So that left these two buy it now prices kind of just sitting there waiting for their time, waiting for their day in the sun. But still, if I wanted one of these right now, I only got 2 options. So I'm going to have to be patient and hope that seller who's blowing them out at auction has another copy, if that's what I was looking for. But with that said, only 2 out there right now, which will take us to our next book, which is another Conan book. And I think our last Conan book for today, King Conan #1. Another Buscema cover, December 2021. Here, though, another 1 in 100. Print run on this is apparently low. Now, this is getting into that time of the pandemic where numbers get a little shakier. So we can't know any of this for sure. So this even becomes even more questionable than the numbers we already question. But just under 13,000 would tell us that there's under 130. Ooh, I don't know. Would they really print that few of this? Not sure. But we can't know for sure. What I can tell you is, in the CGC census, this book also only has 6 copies, but all 6 are 9/8s. How much will these 9/8s go for, or raws go for? I can't tell you because none have sold within the last 3 months. And not only that, I went looking, I went searching, and I also could not find any listed for sale currently for this 1 in 100 King Conan #1. What does that mean? Well, it ain't as easy to find as you might think. So, who knows what the number might be? There's none out there if you're looking right now. So good luck to you. Moving on to another character of that Savage Avenger group. Let's take a look at the Punisher. Just randomly, we're going to jump to the Punisher because I want to show you a little something here. Now, this is a another hidden gem cover. This is a Mike Zeck. This is a 1 in 100 variant here that came out actually before other books. This came out in 2018. In addition to the 1 in 100, at that time, Marvel was also doing even higher ratios. They were getting nuts at the time. And there's a black and white version that's actually a 1 in 500. So this is the one we're going to look at here, I think, for today for Punisher. And 1 in 500, when you look at the print run of 42,000, we're only looking at maybe 85 copies. I don't know if that's true either. Could they really have printed under 100 copies? I mean, that's all that would have been ordered, all that would have qualified to get this book. But what they actually printed would probably be a different number. And outside of that, how did people get a hold of them? Well, as I said, there's a lot of different ways these could have just trickled out and that may not have qualified the 1 in 500 normal way that most stores would have had to have done to get one of these. But as time passes, some of these books just find their ways out there into the wild. Because with 85 copies potentially, seriously, 55 of them got graded. I mean, that's possible, but there are 55 in the census of the Zeck sketch cover, 48 9/8, and then a few others filling that out. So possible, but it seems less likely that that number could be even close to accurate when you consider these copies selling $71, $150, $26 at auction, $51 at auction. So there's copies being sold at auction because all of these are raw. So you're telling me if there was only 85, 55 got graded, that leaves us only 30. And you're telling me out of that 35 of them sold within the last 3 months at auction? I don't know about that. But if you wanted to buy one, well, guess what? They're not all gone either. Because whoever's got that, I know you've noticed that listing with the blue. I don't know who the seller is. I'm not going to go that deep into checking. They must have a bunch of them because look, there's another one at auction starting at 25 bucks. And then we've got a 9/8 looking for 480. We got a couple other raws looking for 135 and 270. And then more listings than this. But just to give you a sense of there's some very high asks and there are some really cheap auctions. So where did these copies come from? Why are there so many copies? I don't know. I can't tell you. But it's out there. So be wary and do not. I would just be careful. That's the best advice I can give you. If you want to go and collect these, I get it, but don't overvalue the high ratio incentive because it may not be as hard as you might think to get a hold of. But with that all said, sure, buddy, you do what you like. And with that, we're going to look at these higher ratio incentives and kick it up another notch just to kind of wrap up here as I got another pair of books to look at. Starting off with Joe Quesada, another hidden gem, this time doing the X-Men, Uncanny XMen 1. This is a 1 in 500 incentive. So we're sticking with this high ratio. We're going with this 1 in 500 high-end, very hard to qualify for ratio. Also, 2018. Like I said, in 2018, at that time, they were doing these crazy 1 in 500, 1 in 1000s, which we will also get to in a second. But first, let's take a look at this 1 in 500 color cover, Joe Quesada, Virgin. Pretty cool. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I kind of like this. I like the X-Men. Joe Quesada's art can be hit or miss sometimes. It can be very stylized, but I don't know. I kind of like this one. Big number on this. Uncanny X-Men 1. It's X title after all. New number 1, 176,000 plus. Big number. So even with that big number, 1 in 500, the incentive could potentially be only 352 copies. Don't know how accurate that could be. But I can tell you there are 79 copies in the census with 62 9/8, 13 9/6s, and a few others. So that actually kind of fits what I would expect for a book of this kind. It's a 1 in 500 after all. So a lot of people would probably get it graded if they had a nice copy. And 350 seems like a viable low end on the print, that they would print and make and end up out there. So maybe it is a close estimate. Who knows? Copy sold, however, well, once again, auctions, 52 bucks. Buy it now for only 115 for a 1 in 500. A 9.8 sold. Buy it now for only 175 for a 1 in 500. That said, that's what's sold over the last 3 months, and that goes back to February and March. So nothing is sold that recent. And if you wanted to get one of these, to be fair, there's only one out there, and they want $699. That's probably why this one's still listed, because they're looking for $699. But with 8 watchers, there's people keeping an eye on it. This is the only option you got right now, though. So who knows? Who knows what will happen? Maybe more will come to market. Maybe there are no more to come. Who knows? That said, I thought it was interesting to take a look at this one. In addition to the fact that this is the 1 in 500, which is a color version, there is also a black and white sketch version. That's a 1 in 1,000. Yes, 1 in 1,000. So that would mean our estimate could go even lower, down to 176 copies. I don't know if that's true, but 41 in the census, 33 9/8, 696s, a couple others. No copies sold for this 1 in 1,000 variant over the last 3 months. Not surprising. And if you wanted to buy one, well, I also only found one listed, and it actually is a 9.6 signature series with 3 SIGs on it, and they're looking for $1,000. So who knows the price, which is at ratio, but it's also a signature series with 3 SIGs on it. So who knows? It's not apples to apples. So who knows what the market would bear for a book like this? That said, still not a ton out there. There's only the one. So it is what it is. Again, I wanted to take a look at these things. I was curious, and I didn't know what the end result was going to be before going into it. So I'm surprised by some of these results, including our final book, which is yet 1 in 1,000, like the last book. So this is another Buscema cover. This is Thor #1. It actually is a wraparound, so I'll show you. Here's the full cover. Pretty cool. Not bad, right? Pretty cool art there. January 2020. It is a 1 in 1,000. Print run was pretty high at the time at 100 and almost 160,000. But even so, we do that math. The incentive could be just over 150 copies. I don't know. That seems low, but that's what the math tells us. CGC census, however, tells us that number's got to be way off, because there were 134 graded copies, 110 9/8s, 6 9/6s, 12 9/4s, and a handful of others. But still, 134 graded copies if there's potentially only 158. That's not adding up, right? Especially when you consider what sold. Look at these sales. A 9/8 sold at auction for $83. Raw copies at auction, 60, 53, 51, 29 bucks for a 1 in 1,000. Couldn't be all that hard to get a hold of. They're accepting these prices. That's all I'm saying. And if you want to buy one, guess what? You can get one. Granted, somebody wants 1,200 bucks for one, which is what I would have thought the prices might have been, because, well, it's, it's 1 in 1,000. How many places order 1,000 copies of Thor #1? It's got to be really, really tough. So 1,200 bucks. Well, maybe that's right. Maybe in a 9/8 at 560 bucks. That seems like it's a fair number. Or, well, maybe 350 is a fair number for a 9/8. Or maybe 350 is fair for just a raw copy. I don't know. When I see some of those sales where they accepted 30 bucks at auction, they only got 50. A 9/8 at auction got under 100 bucks. I don't know. Would make me wary of any of these high ratio incentives from Marvel, especially at this time, because it doesn't seem to work out for the math. Again, you got to think about it. Marvel is a very big company. They're not just going to print 85 copies of a cover because that's all that was ordered. They're going to print what's going to print. It's not worth their effort for the printer to turn the printer on just to do 85 copies of something. So they're going to run copies off. They may just stash them and store them, how those copies now hit to the market when they probably should have been destroyed to keep things fair, but you know, diamond's gonna diamond, and those copies end up out there. So it is what it is. And with that all said, hopefully you found this week interesting because I definitely did. Not knowing what to expect. But even with all that said, out of the 11, 12-ish books we looked at, these 8 we'll call hard to find because, well, there were copies available for you if you wanted them. But meanwhile, these 3, there was only one, none, and one. So not a lot of options if you were actually shopping for these. So based off of our criteria, that would make these 3 ghosts this week. Let me know if you have any of these. Let me know your thoughts on these hidden gems as well. Again, I'm just looking into these things that I find personally interesting and see how it all shakes out. And then I just share my results with you guys. But that's what I found this week. That hidden gem variants. Got to question some of these print run numbers, but that is what it is. All that said, thanks for stopping by and checking this out. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you found that interesting. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I'll be back with some more content soon. All right, later.